Israel's war against Hamas risks drawing regional players into a wider conflict with repercussions far beyond the Middle East, security experts have warned. With Israel expected to send ground troops into Gaza in response to Saturday's deadly attacks on its territory and people, the issue now is how the confrontation escalates, said Miri Eisen, a retired colonel who worked in military intelligence and now runs a counterterrorism institute at Reichman University in Israel. Whether this will lead to a bigger war is the $64,000 question, she told Fortune. If Iran has a finger in this, do we now preempt against the next stage? The conflict comes with geopolitical tensions already running high, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine and US-China relations at their worst for decades. Analysts at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute warned this summer that the world was drifting into one of the most dangerous periods in human history, with the number of operational nuclear warheads owned by major military powers rising in the past year to an estimated 12,512. Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has spent the past 3 decades sounding the alarm about Iran's nuclear program, and he has threatened to attack the country numerous times. But after Hamas's assault on the 7th of October, he may finally be able to act on his threats, said Al Jazeera. Iran is how the conflict spirals, agreed Sky News' Mark Stone. Israel is convinced that Hamas's unprecedented attack is not just inspired by Iran, but funded by Iran and equipped by Iran, he said. And if Israel finds a smoking gun, global anxiety increases. Netanyahu and his ministers may have something very different in mind for the US deployment that goes beyond military deterrence and political posturing, said Al Jazeera. He may try to widen the scope of the war to include Iran. Speaking to the Express in May, Brandon Weichert, geopolitical analyst and author of The Shadow War, Iran's Quest for Supremacy, warned that the threat of a new world war was most likely to come from the Middle East. It will emanate from an Iran that is empowered by its allies in Beijing and Moscow, he said, warning the US risks getting dragged into a new war at precisely the moment it does not have the capability, resources, or will to achieve victory in such a conflict. After talks aimed at reviving the 2015 nuclear deal collapsed last year, fears have continued to grow that Iran's aggressive expansion of its nuclear program risks triggering a regional war, reported the Financial Times. Russia. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which began in February 2022, has been described as more dangerous than anything Europe has seen since the end of World War II, said Politico. Since then, Vladimir Putin's losses have only increased the chances that the Russian president will lash out and expand the conflict, said the Wall Street Journal. In July, Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president and now deputy secretary of its Security Council, warned against NATO members pledging further military aid to Kyiv. The completely crazy West could not come up with anything else, Medvedev wrote on Telegram. In fact, it's a dead end. World War III is getting closer. Hamas's attack on Israel has added yet another element to an already unstable picture. It doesn't take much strategic insight to join the dots between Gaza, Tehran, and Moscow, said the Telegraph. The Russia-Iran axis, so horrifically manifested in this devastating assault against Israel, as well as repeated war crimes against the Ukrainian population, symbolizes a growing challenge for the West as emerging totalitarian alliances work to undermine the democratic order. China. The greatest threat to geopolitical stability has long been assumed to be the growing tensions between China and the US, who are locked in an increasingly intense rivalry, said the New York Times. The rapid growth and modernization of China's military has worried American onlookers, said the paper, with the US now having fewer military personnel and naval vessels. Relations dramatically escalated last year after the then US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, said CNN, souring further after China flew a giant balloon into US airspace. It is the disputed island nation of Taiwan, which China claims sovereignty over, that is by the far the most dangerous flashpoint in a future regional conflict that could draw in the likes of the US. In recent months, there has been an attempt, led by Washington, to cool the hostile rhetoric and find common ground. However, analysts believe relations are so fraught that re-establishing a semblance of stability and balance will take much more effort and political will, said NPR, and will be tested by presidential elections in the US and Taiwan. Mutual trust is running thin. North Korea. Security dynamics in Northeast Asia have become increasingly volatile with China's growing military threats and in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, said the Washington Post. North Korea has drawn closer to Russia, while Japan's relations with Russia have deteriorated. In July, North Korea detained a young US Army soldier, Travis King, who crossed the border from South Korea without permission. The crisis came during a particularly tense time with the North, said BBC News. The same month, the US sent a submarine with nuclear-armed ballistic missiles to South Korea for the first time in decades, prompting North Korea's defense minister to warn that this could meet its legal conditions for use of nuclear weapons. Artificial intelligence. Recent high-profile advances in artificial intelligence have led to increased fears that AI could accidentally cause a global conflict. A leading academic at the University of Cambridge told the iNews site in March that the technology could, in an extreme case, mistake a bird as an incoming threat and trigger a nuclear launch if no human override is in place to assess alerts from an AI-assisted early warning system. Although no state is openly attempting to automate its nuclear weapon systems, integrating AI with command systems seems promising and even unavoidable, said Peter Rautenbach from the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. As we conclude this exploration of the complex and concerning question, are we heading for World War III? It's important to remember that the future of our world is far from certain, and the factors at play are deeply intricate. While we've examined the historical context, the global power dynamics, and the potential flashpoints, we must also recognize the power of human agency and diplomacy. The prospect of a global conflict is undoubtedly a topic that raises anxiety and uncertainty. The lessons of history remind us of the devastating consequences that war can bring. However, history also teaches us that humanity has the capacity to learn from its mistakes and choose a different path. In this era of interconnectedness, diplomacy and dialogue have become more crucial than ever. International organizations, alliances, and forums exist to facilitate discussions, negotiations, and peaceful resolutions. Nations have a vested interest in avoiding the horrors of another world war, and the voices of people who demand peace, cooperation, and unity continue to grow stronger. We have the power to shape the future. The decisions our leaders make, the way we engage in international relations, and the policies we support can all influence the trajectory of global events. It's a reminder that each one of us has a role to play in promoting peace, understanding, and cooperation. Rather than succumbing to fear, let's choose to be informed, to engage in constructive discussions, and to encourage diplomatic solutions to global challenges. It is not just our responsibility, but our collective mission to ensure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. The possibility of World War III is a grim thought, but it's not an inevitability. Let this video be a catalyst for deeper conversations, critical thinking, and actions that promote a peaceful world. Your awareness and involvement can make a difference. By staying informed, advocating for diplomacy, and fostering international collaboration, we can work together to build a future where the world is not headed for another devastating world war, but instead towards a more harmonious and peaceful coexistence. Thank you for joining us in this discussion. Please like, subscribe, and share this video to continue the dialogue. And remember, a world at peace is a world worth fighting for.